Hello. The only surviving near-contemporary documentary source for Britain in the 5th and early 6th centuries is the work of Gildas, a British monk whose highly critical commentary on the ruin and conquest of Britain was probably written around AD 540. Gildas tells us he was born in the same year that the Britons scored a significant victory over an Anglo-Saxon army at the Battle of Mons Badonicus, or Mount Badon, after the emergence of a competent leader who unifies and organises resistance. Gildas couldn't have been a witness to this event, but it's likely he met people who were. Later writers will associate Arthur with the battle. Gildas doesn't give a date or a location for this decisive encounter, and few people are named by him, but importantly, he does tell us the victor at Mount Badon was called Ambrosius Aurelianus. Although containing a narrative of events in post-Roman Britain, Gildas's intention wasn't to record history. His work is essentially a sermon, a savagely critical judgment on British leaders, both secular and religious. The British kings who are named are Constantine, Aurelius Cananus, Vortiporius, Cuniglas and Maelgwyn, who are colourfully compared to the biblical beasts described in the Book of Revelation and the Book of Daniel, and accused of a variety of sins, including adultery and murder. Gildas tells us that Anglo-Saxon mercenaries were invited into Britain from the late 440s to combat the threat from raiding Picts and Irish. In later Irish accounts, attacks from that quarter are headed by Niall of the Nine Hostages, supposed ancestor of the O'Neill dynasty, who ruled much of Ireland from the 5th to the 10th centuries. The leader Gildas accuses of being responsible for the policy of bringing in Anglo-Saxon mercenaries he labels simply as the proud tyrant or the usurper, clearly a ruler with considerable authority over significant territory. Bede, writing nearly 2 centuries after Gildas, names him as Vertigernus, but doesn't give his source for this detail. According to Gildas, then all the councillors, together with that proud tyrant the British king, were so blinded that as a protection to their country they sealed its doom by inviting in among them, like wolves into the sheepfold, the fierce and impious Saxons, a race hateful both to God and men, to repel the invasions of the northern nations. Those very people whom when absent they dreaded more than death itself were invited to reside. Gildas says the Saxons arrived in 3 keels, but the figure of 3 for the ships carrying the mercenaries may be a symbolic rather than a literal number. Then he tells us more follow, and once established they soon become uncontrollable. According to his account, a dispute over rations leads to revolt. The barbarians, thus being introduced as soldiers into the island, to encounter, as they falsely said, any dangers in defence of their hospitable entertainers, obtain an allowance of provisions, which for some time, being plentifully bestowed, stopped their doggish mouths. Yet they complain that their monthly supplies are not furnished in sufficient abundance, and they industriously aggravate each occasion of quarrel, saying that unless more liberality is shown them, they will plunder the whole island. In a short time, they follow up their threats with deeds. Gildas goes on to conjure up graphic images of unburied corpses, for the fire of vengeance justly kindled by former crimes spread from sea to sea, fed by the hands of our foes in the east, and did not cease until, destroying the neighbouring towns and lands, it dipped its red and savage tongue in the Western Ocean. Some people, Gildas tells us, threatened with death or famine, fled abroad or surrendered as slaves, while others retreated to the mountains and forests to make a stand. This fits with the reoccupation of hillforts in the 5th century after 400 years of abandonment, for which there is ample archaeological evidence, although who lived in them is unclear from the artefacts, which at the very least show interaction and trade between native Britons and immigrants. Leading the fight back, Gildas tells us, was Ambrosius Aurelianus, a modest man who of all the Roman nation was then, alone in the confusion of this troubled period, by chance left alive. His parents, who for their merit were adorned with the purple, had been slain in these same broils, and now his progeny, in these our days, although shamefully degenerated from the worthiness of their ancestors, provoked to battle their cruel conquerors, and by the goodness of our Lord obtained the victory. After this, sometimes our countrymen, sometimes the enemy won the field, until the year of the siege of Mons Badonicus, when took place also the last, almost though not the least, slaughter of our cruel foes, which was 44 years and 1 month after the landing of the Saxons, and also the time of my own nativity. And yet neither to this day are the cities of our country inhabited as before, but being forsaken and overthrown, still lie desolate, our foreign wars having ceased, but our civil troubles still remaining. The site of the battle at Mount Badon has never been identified. Various locations have been proposed, including the hillforts at Little Solsbury Hill just outside Bath, Liddington Castle in Wiltshire, overlooking the Ridgeway ancient track, Ringsbury Camp, also in Wiltshire, and Badbury Rings in Dorset. An important junction may have been involved, for example where the ancient Ridgeway and Icknield Way cross at Ivinghoe Beacon in Buckinghamshire. Gildas intimates the peace achieved by victory at Mount Badon was still holding at the time he is writing, around AD 540, our foreign wars having ceased. It's in this period of relative peace, the first half of the 6th century, that the Welsh kingdoms emerge, a period dubbed the Age of Saints, when Celtic missionaries were active, spreading Christianity and founding churches. What can we learn from that reference to Ambrosius Aurelianus, a modest man who of all the Roman nation by chance left alive, whose parents were adorned with the purple, and who prevails in battle by the goodness of our Lord? Is a successful Romano-British military leader, a Christian, and from a family adorned with the purple, suggests high-status senatorial class or military commanders. Roman cavalry tribunes wore a purple band. Is Ambrosius Aurelianus Arthur, one of the figures that inspired the legends, or a close relative? Writing in the 12th century, Geoffrey of Monmouth, in his History of the Kings of Britain, describes a similarly named Aurelius Ambrosius as the brother of Uther Pendragon and Arthur's uncle. In his later years, Gildas moved to Brittany, where he founded a monastery at what is now St Gildas de Rhys, where there is a commemorative statue. He was almost certainly educated at the monastic college widely believed to have been established by St Iltud around AD 500 at what is now Llantwit Major in Glamorgan. Iltud is an interesting character with Arthurian connections that I shall explore next time. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons and click on the notification bell to be informed when the next video is available, or you can subscribe by clicking on the rose window over my shoulder.